Good afternoon. My name is Jamie Coulter. I am the CEO of Raymond James in Canada. And joining me today is Chuck Grace, the Program Director for the Ivey Academy's Investment Professional Leadership Program. Chuck, thank you so much for joining us today.
It is my pleasure. Glad to be here.
We've got a few questions we're going to go through today and talk about things like key trends in Canada's wealth management industry, highlight key success factors for advisors as the industry continues to evolve. And equally importantly, probably most importantly for you, is discussing the role of education and training in strengthening the wealth management industry. And before we sort of dive into it, I think probably a good starting point for our audience here is describing or providing a bit of an overview of the Ivey Academy.
Oh, absolutely. The Ivey Academy is the executive education arm for the Ivey Business School at Western University in London, Ontario. It's differentiated from most exec ed programs throughout Canada because we adopt the case-based methodology, both at the business school and in our exec ed. But it's the number one provider of executive education in Canada right now.
And a perfect partner for the Investment Professional Leadership Program.
We hope so, yes.
Well, why don't we jump right into it, and I'll get the first question out to you. With decades of experience in the financial sector and your current academic roles, you, in my view, have a really unique perspective on Canada's wealth management industry. Now, what do you currently see as the most important and or interesting trends shaping the industry today?
Well, let me start by focusing in on the decades of experience, because that always makes me feel very, very old. And then I look in the video and I see my gray hair glowing in the lamplight and realize that it's probably quite true. But yeah, I've had an opportunity to observe the industry both from the inside and from the outside as an industry practitioner and then in academia. And if we talk about sort of the tidal forces, the things that are driving the industry, and individuals really don't get a say. It's very difficult for individuals to change the trajectory of any of these tidal forces. They kind of happen to you rather than with you. But I would say there's 10, and I always have to refer to my notes because no matter how often I say this, I always forget one. The first one is just the globalization of competition and the hyper competition that's out there. That's not going away. Wealth management is a very attractive industry, and there's a lot of people that want to play in that industry. Related to that is the race for scale and the realization that the bigger you are, the more you can contain your costs. And that's related to the third one, which is fee compression. A lot of pressure on fees in the industry. And if you want to reduce your fees to be competitive, you need to reduce your costs, thus scale. So those all kind of go together. And then they're related to number 4, which is product commoditization. And just this proliferation of managed product and securities and so forth. Within Canada, we represent less than 3% of the world's wealth. But we have, over 5,000 stocks, depending on the load structure, 10,000 mutual funds, well north of 1,000 ETFs now, and then all of the alternative investments as well. That's a lot of product that we're asking advisors and Canadians to absorb. So as a result, it's becoming commoditized. Number 5, we have baby boom advisor generation. So we have some aging advisors. We have a huge cohort of advisors that are within 5 to 6 years of collecting CPP. And as they transition to their well-earned retirement, who's going to follow in behind them? Number 6 would be our regulators. Growth industry in Canada, not going away, big business, out to ensure clients' best interest. And they're becoming more and more assertive in ensuring that their mandate is met around that client's best interest. Next one would be digitization, huge trend before the pandemic. Now it's entrenched. The days of paper, wet signatures, client visits, gone. Now clients expect you to be able to correspond with them, talk to them when and where they choose, how they choose, often electronically on the device they choose. Next up would be ESG, the rise of ESG. Despite what Mr. Musk might say, it's a thing. It's not a trend anymore. It's a hardcore part of the business, and you need to be on the right side of this if you want to be sustainable. Number 9 is, of course, the pandemic and the pandemic hangover and everything that's come with that, from going back to work to digitization to what the heck is happening in the markets. The 10th one, and the last one, I think, is probably the most important one. And it's the fact that all 9 of those are happening simultaneously. They're happening faster, they're happening deeper, and the pace of disruption is intimidating. And I think if an advisor spent 100% of their time just trying to figure out where the world is going, they would be consumed. But of course they can't. They're trying to meet with clients, they're trying to keep up with markets. So keeping up to date with all of those moving pieces simultaneously, it's a big, big ask of our industry, of executives like yourself, and advisors. Their heads are spinning.
You're bang on. It's a comprehensive list, and it is a big ask. And the advisors and the firms are having to try and keep those plates all spinning and serve clients at the same time.
Oh yeah, business doesn't stop while you figure this out, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
We're changing the wheels on the car, and the car's doing 110 down the highway.
Yeah, and not only is the car doing 110, but at any one point, you're not really sure if the car is going to turn left or right or continue straight. And there's no one definitive answer to that. So what we, in the investment professional leadership program that we just are wrapping up, we spend a lot of time talking about scenario planning. You can't predict the future. We don't know what the future is going to look like. But what you can start to formulate are scenarios. The industry could get bigger. The industry could become more digitized. It could be. And then start to map out, if X happened, what would we do? If Y happened, what would we do? And just mapping out those scenarios so that when the emergent trends become obvious, you're ready to act.
I think that's a really interesting point, and it forces you to take a deliberate and intentional mindset about what the future might bring, and different, and also contemplate different futures, not just the one you hope is coming, and sort of force you to think into a realm that's okay. Well, I don't want this to happen, but what if it does?
Yeah, so that all blends into something else we're going to talk about, which is agility and adaptation. We don't know where the world is going to go. And if you want to survive, you're going to have to learn skills around agility and adapting to scenario A or scenario B. If you don't adapt, then you're along for the ride with the tidal force. And sometimes those don't end well. So I'd rather be master of my own destiny than perhaps riding a tsunami into the beach.
The perfect segue into the next question. So again, you talk about agility and adaptability, and more specifically, what do you see as the key success factors that will help advisors thrive in the years ahead as the industry continues to change? And I say continues to change because it's always changed.
Yeah, I think there's probably 4 that I can think of off the top of my head. Number 1, lean into digitization. I think every advisor that wants to thrive in this brave new world has to welcome, adopt, and embrace digitization. It's a reality. It was a reality before the pandemic, and now it is very firmly entrenched. Now, digitization isn't just getting on Zoom with clients, exchanging forms back and forth electronically. I think it also has a lot to do with practice management And any advisors, for example, that are still, if you're still crunching numbers on Excel, well, I can point to a half dozen to a dozen platforms that will crunch those numbers faster and more accurately than you can in Excel. You know, that's right up to and including product portfolio optimization. It's not just that those platforms can do it faster and more accurately, but they're probably already in the hands of your clients. And so as you're crunching numbers and trying to come up with answers, often your clients are testing you. They've already done it over here on the right, and they're checking to see what your answer is going to be, and it's different. So again, just another example of really leaning into the technology and adopting that. Number 2 on my list. What was my second one? Oh, how could I forget this one? So in this very complex, noisy world where clients are sometimes almost as well informed as the advisors are, or think they're informed, they have data, but perhaps not information. They may be misinformed, actually. Finding your voice in that, defining your value proposition has never been more important. Why do clients want to work with you? Which clients are best for you to work with? If you can't define that with clarity and precision, then you're just part of an homogenous crowd. And what dictates who clients work with in that homogenous crowd is price. And lowest price always wins. In that context, you know, very difficult to compete with a robo-advisor on price. So I think really important that advisors define their value. Number 3 was embracing agility and adaptation. You know, the line, I've always done it this way. This is what led me to success. I'm uniquely skilled at this. I don't need to change, are probably red signs, red flags that suggest you might want to just adopt a little bit of humility. Tidal forces happen to you. There's nothing you can do about them. And so learning the skills behind agility and adaptation, really important. And then the last one, client conversations and mastering client conversations, which loops back to the value proposition. In the old days, advisors had a habit of doing all the talking. They knew the markets, they knew the products, they knew a lot more than their clients. They could go into this a narrative and really impress the heck out of their clients. Clients won't put up with that anymore. And again, they're often well informed. So learning how to master conversations is really important. And the key to a conversation is listening twice as much as you talk. And I have encountered some advisors that struggle with that. They feel they're not adding value unless they're doing the talking, but sometimes you don't know what to talk about if you don't listen first. So those would be my 4. Define your value, lean into digitization, embrace agility, and master client conversations.
That's a good list. And that, again, that's a lot. That's a big skill set that we're asking busy advisors to try and master, again, while keeping their businesses running and you know, even in a market kind of conditions like we're experiencing right now.
Oh yeah, it's a huge ask. There's so much on their plate, and then to ask them to do this on top of that, big ask.
Yeah. Well, I think that leads nicely into the next question. So thinking of your roles at the Ivey Business School and Canada's Financial Wellness Lab, you're involved in research and teaching on a range of topics related to personal financial management. So where do you see opportunities for education and training to strengthen the Canadian wealth management industry?
I think our industry does a really good job on the technical side of things. We license advisors, bring them into the industry and get them established with a really good skill set around technical knowledge, product, et cetera, the regulations, et cetera. And the industry backs that up and supports it with some very powerful institutions and some very powerful opportunities to stay abreast of that through conferences, through seminars with dealerships, through conferences and seminars with folks like the IIAC. The regulators are out there doing a good job crisscrossing the country and sharing what they think. So I think we have the technical side nailed. I think where the industry is challenged is what we'd call the soft skills, and probably the last two we just talked about, which is learning, agility, and adaptation. It is a skill. It's a learned skill. Doesn't come naturally to most people. Most people, when confronted with change, react defensively. I don't have to do this. I don't want to do this. You can't make me do this. And so learning to let go of that, welcoming the adaptation, welcoming change, thriving in that is definitely a skill that you can learn. And then those client conversations. It's not a technical skill. It's not part of the curriculum for the CSC. It's not something we've typically spent a lot of time at conferences and so forth working with advisors on. And, I just saw it in all its color with the investment professional leadership program as we walked them through the skills necessary to converse, and then had them do breakout groups and try and experiment. And the first couple of experiments were uncomfortable for a lot of folks, but they leaned into it, they mastered it, we coached them along, and I think they came out quite skilled. Having said that, we just touched the surface. So, difficult conversations. What's going on in the market? What are we going to do about my mom with dementia? What are we going to do about my kids who are unemployed? How can I help my kids get into a house that they can't afford? Like, the conversations are getting more and more and more complex. And any one of those topics can be intimidating. And it's a skill you have to practice.
Certainly, anecdotally, I'm hearing from advisors at our firm that the substance of their conversations has changed dramatically in the last few years. Prior, it would have been mostly about the investment returns, investment management process, et cetera, et cetera. And now, if it's an hour conversation with a client or a couple, the first 5 minutes might be on, how's the portfolio doing? Am I on track or not? And then 55 minutes on everything else, including some of the scenarios you just outlined.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. And again, not necessarily something that we hired, trained, recruited, et cetera, advisors to do from the get-go. And they're learning how to grow into those conversations, sometimes well, sometimes with difficulty.
As you said, a lot of these are actually learned. They're skills that can be learned, but you do need to pick them up somewhere. And so this seems like a perfect opportunity just to perhaps speak a little bit more specifically about the investment professional leadership program, or the IPLP as we call it. So maybe I'll just back over to you, Chuck, and you can sort of elaborate a little bit about the structure of the program and why you think it's going to be a great tool for the advisor of the future.
Yeah, so giving credit where credit is due, that the impetus behind this came from yourself, and you coined the term master advisor, which to me created this picture of the next gen advisor, an advisor who's taken their practice to a new level and a new trajectory. The difference between an undergrad degree and a graduate degree in a business school, and looking at that next generation of advisors. What are the skills necessary to grow into that picture of a master advisor? And so the curriculum was very much carefully crafted and curated around, again, that reality that there's lots of people delivering technical skills. if you want to know the ins and outs of a leveraged beta ETF in the Far East China Tea Fund, whatever name they've come up with these things for them now, there's people that will do that in intimate detail. But there's some other things that we haven't perhaps been doing as great a job. So the program focused on leadership dynamics, leadership skill, working with your team. One of the big things that came out of the program this year was the number of people who were struggling to work effectively with a team. A lot of advisors grew up and came through the network almost as sole practitioners. And learning how to be a leader and a manager, again, is a new skill. How to hire, how to fire, what to do when your millennial employee says, there's no way I'm coming back to the office. What do? I need you back in the office. And they say, no, over my, that's one of the things we're coping with. So those kind of leadership skills, we spent a lot of time understanding digitization and where that fits in a practice, how to integrate that into your practice. Sometimes digitization is done to advisors, quote unquote, by their dealer or by the industry, but there's lots of things they can do for themselves. Understanding social media, purposely choosing where you want to be seen and who you want to talk to. Everybody's on Reddit, so I need to be on Reddit. Why? How many of your clients and your target clients are conversing on Reddit? If they're not there, you need to go where they are. A lot of time on managing complexity, working in an unpredictable world, and then moving on to, we had 2 or 3 sessions on difficult conversations. We had a session, one of the sessions I liked the most was training for a marathon, and recognizing that in today's world, this isn't a sprint. An advisor's career isn't a sprint. It's long, it's hard, it's arduous. You're working strange hours. You're not eating right. You're probably not drinking right. And if you want to endure, what are those habits that gifted elite athletes use to sustain their careers? Same thing for advisors. To behavioral finance, to working with regulators, and then again, right around to bringing it all together with an action plan that talked to how they're going to pull all of this together into something cohesive that they can act upon.
And put into action.
Yeah. So the program kind of mirrors the outside world.
Yep.
Ton of moving pieces. How do you cut through the noise and figure out what's really important to you right now and where should you focus?
That's great.
We finished that up last week. I haven't seen the student surveys, student evaluations that came back, but on the first 2 modules, they were really, really good. I expect the third one to be similar. So we're kind of excited about what we've launched.
Well, that's been the feedback I've heard has been tremendous. So congratulations to you and the team at the Ivey Academy for pulling this together in very short order as well.
Well, and I don't want to call them students because they're grown-ups, right? Our participants,
yes,
made it easy because they're just such a dynamic, colorful, engaging group of people who wanted to be there, had a thirst for learning, and it was just a joy to work with them.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to gathering with you and the that inaugural class later in the fall when the final projects are presented in downtown Toronto here at the Ivey site, just down the block from me.
Yeah, and graduation, walk across the stage. Yeah, all that good stuff.
Wonderful. Well, I just want to thank my guest today, Chuck Grace, the Program Director for the Ivey Academy's Investment Professional Leadership Program. Great insights into a variety of different aspects of the modern wealth management industry. The tidal forces coming at us, key success factors that advisors will need to demonstrate, and a program, importantly, that will help them do so. Chuck, thank you again for your time. Pleasure as always.
Jamie, again, it was my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.